In today's episode, I'll be speaking with Phil Gerbyshak, who's the Chief Revenue Officer of Process and Results. Phil Gerbyshak knows sales. He's a sales speaker, a sales expert, a sales trainer, a sales leader mentor, a sales podcaster, and a sales coach. He has written 5 books, more than 3,000 articles, and has been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Daily Globe and Mail, Financial Times, Investors Business Daily, Inc., and many other publications, including 3 covers: Speaker Magazine, Marketing, Media, and Money, and Social Selling Made Easy. Currently, he serves as the Chief Revenue Officer at Process and Results, where they do sales for companies. He's a former Vice President of Information Technology at a financial services company. Phil has also worked as the Director of Social Strategy, where he coached, consulted with, and trained customers and prospects how to integrate social media and digital selling tactics into their organization's daily sales and marketing practices. His clients included many of the largest financial services, banking, and insurance firms in the United States, Canada, and Europe. Phil is known as a sales, leadership, and technology authority with a particular expertise in LinkedIn and social selling. Now, Phil trains, consults with, and leads sales teams, organizations, and business owners on the power of connection and how to best leverage the reach of social media combined with the deeply personal work of nurturing one-to-one relationships to grow profitable long-term clients, transforming business, and boosting revenue. People matter, and they don't scale. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So, Phil, welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, and tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, first, thanks so much for having me. It's fun to be on the show. And how did I get started in this, and what's my career? Well, I'm currently the Chief Revenue Officer at Process and Results, and it's crazy because I'd have never thought that I'd ever got into this. I started out delivering email by hand. I eventually went to school to be a school teacher. I went from there to a sales job as a stockbroker. I sold DSL, high-speed internet, back before the internet had high speed. Was a VP of IT, got into social media before it was social media, and then started my own agency and realized that sales was at the center of absolutely everything that I did. So it just made sense to me that I would move into a role like this as the Chief Revenue Officer at Process and Results.
Well, that's a great story, but I just have to ask, you started by delivering email by hand. Tell me what that means.
Sure. Well, I was in the Navy, and I worked for the National Security Agency, and we had one terminal in our whole office. My job was to get those emails, read them, and say, hey, here's one for Nancy, here's one for Phil, and here's one for Phil and Nancy, because we just had one computer, so I was a human distribution list. I delivered email by hand.
That is hysterical. Sometimes I feel like I'm dating myself when I talk about the pre-internet days, but you're dating yourself a little bit too by saying that you were doing this hand delivery of emails. But that means that we have a lot of experience, Phil.
That's right. Yes, we're seasoned, right? Like a good seasoning.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So this question, it the numbers are staggering to me. What is the biggest challenge that organizations struggle with when they're trying to scale from $500,000 to $5 million?
Well, the one that we see the most is that they don't have any repeatable processes, whether it's a sales process or a marketing process, a promotion process, a way to get PR, or even a way to intake customers. The less processes they have, the less they can scale. So we see that just failing to systematize and processize things is the biggest challenge, because we spend so much time doing the work as a $500,000 business that we don't spend any time actually figuring out how to do the work over and over again in a way that scales, so that we only have to tweak a little bit instead of tweaking everything. And oh boy, here's just a little bit that we do every time.
Absolutely. That reminds me of one of my favorite books that I read early on when I started my business, which was the E-Myth Revisited, which is all about creating those processes, almost as if you're developing a franchise and you want to have offices in every city all across the country, and you need to have processes, procedures, and systems that even the lowest level employee can follow time after time.
Absolutely. And it's also things that your customers have to be able to follow too. I mean, the longer they stay with you, often the more we take for granted as a business owner that they know, that they understand, but often they end up taking shortcuts that end up being in their benefit instead of in the long-term benefit of their customers as well as us as service providers.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think sometimes if a client or customer has been with you a long, long time, they sort of take a little bit of pride of ownership. And, we might not deliver the same quality service to them as we do to a brand new client or customer. So I agree that it is important to treat people the same. And I think that's a big part of building a brand, too. People want to be treated the same way every time they work with your company, because that's the look and feel, and that's the personal touch of a brand.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And they not only they expect it every time, but they expect it everywhere, whether it's on social, in PR, on a podcast, face to face, over Zoom, on the telephone. It doesn't make any difference. Customers are always expecting the same level of care and compassion and empathy in service that adds value to their life each and every time, each and every way that we touch them. And that's why it's important that we have systems and things in place so that when things out of the norm happen, we're able to flex for those instead of having to rethink of everything each and every time.
Yeah, and we're going to get into talking a little bit about founders a little bit later, but yes, the longer that you've had a business and the more employees that you add, the founder can't do everything. So you have to entrust your brand to other employees, and you have to tell them how you expect them to carry it out. So you make a very good point. So how can business owners hire their first salesperson successfully? I know from personal experience that this is a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It is a big challenge. It's probably the second or third biggest challenge that any of our organizations that we work with face, and that is, how do we hire that first salesperson and make sure that they're successful? I think we have to split that question apart. First, you have to decide, do I really need a first salesperson? And I would argue that sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can get by with an operations person. Sometimes it's marketing help. Sometimes you don't have to hire. Sometimes you can freelance, hire, someone to be a pirate, right? To really be someone who kind of charts their own course and is good at that. But to be successful, we have to make sure that we really need a salesperson, right? That we're ready for a salesperson, that we have some repeatable processes, or that we're willing to hire someone who we're going to trust enough to create those first processes. So we have to find out, how did that salesperson, how did they fail in a sales job? How did they not necessarily meet quota? What happened when they lost a deal? Because what we want to hear is, how did they deal with adversity? How did they handle the fact that not everything went absolutely according to plan? And then we want to understand, what processes have they improved to make even better? Because no sales process is perfect. No sales process covers everything, but many sales processes do work if you work them. So we need to find those out. And then last but not least, to hire a successful salesperson, we have to be willing to invest in them, both time and money, because if we only hire a commissioned salesperson, that may not line up as well as we'd like it to with our corporate culture. So we have to make sure that we can invest in them so that they will follow our process, they will follow our guidebook, or that they will create one that you then can come behind as a business owner and say, you know what, I love your process, but I've got a few little tweaks here that we can use to make it even more fit inside of our organization, because you might be the first salesperson that I hire, but you're not going to be the last one, because I'm going to get bigger.
Exactly. My father, my late father, who passed in 2006, was his title was sales engineer. Actually, he was an electrical engineer for Westinghouse, but he was in sales for big equipment like paper machines and electrical generators and things like that. So I grew up observing him as he did his sales job, and he was a master of relationship building. So I think that a big part of sales really is to have people who know, like, and trust you and are willing to share, spend money, and that you're going to deliver on the promise. So, I really admired my dad, and I learned a lot from him about the importance of building relationships with your customers. So, Phil, why do founders make bad salespeople?
Well, I think many founders, especially if they're really good at what they do, are able to sell their vision, but they're not able to explain their vision. So what's the difference here? Well, I can sell my vision. I can sell you on what you need to make your business successful by working with me, because I'm super passionate about what I do. But to actually sell that beyond people who see what you see, meaning those people that are just like you might be able to sell other people that see what you see, but you're not able to flex and then sell into other groups. So what happens is they get stuck in the way that they've always done things, and then they get frustrated in the fact that not everybody sees their vision. So as a salesperson, salespeople are flexible. They have to be flexible to the needs of the client, and they have to be great at solving problems. And often great founders get sucked into believing that everybody needs what they need. And great salespeople know that not everybody is their best customer, and they don't take it personally. Whereas sometimes a founder does. They think, oh no, they're rejecting me. No, they're not rejecting you. Let's be really clear. If you go to the boat store and you try to pick up an airplane, you're not going to be happy getting a boat. Even if you happen to buy that boat, you're like, I really wanted an airplane, and somehow, wow, well, this person, they convinced me to buy a boat, but I'm not happy with it. And so they're not going to be someone that refers you great business, and they're not going to be someone who actually helps you scale the business, because you're going to move on to the next one and you're going to be like, well, they bought a boat and they said they wanted an airplane, so therefore everybody wants that. But great salespeople know that if somebody walks into the boat store and asks for an airplane, yes, we can try to sell them on a boat, but often it's better that we say, you know what? You said that you wanted an airplane, and we don't sell airplanes. So here's somebody that would be even better for you. But when you're ready to get a boat, I hope you'll give me a call. And I know that you'd be really happy getting a boat when you're ready to do that. And I might even help you gin up some demand. I might even help you get some excitement around that boat. Or I might help convince you why maybe an airplane isn't really what you wanted based on what you said. And that's okay too. But I think founders, especially great ones, often don't scale. They often don't get their vision in the hands of their customers in the same way that a salesperson does, because a salesperson makes it about the customer's vision, not about the founder's vision.
Yeah, I think oftentimes founders are so in love with their own company and their own products that they kind of have blinders on. They're like overly passionate. However, I must say that I am a founder, and I actually do most of the sales for my PR agency. And I do really try to take each prospect as an individual and customize a solution. So Maybe I am not the best salesperson, but I try to do the best I can.
Yeah, well, the challenge is though, right? There's that creative tension between doing the work and selling the work, right? And when we determine and when we say best, let's be clear, right? It's not, Nancy, that you're a bad salesperson. I want to be perfectly clear on that. When I say bad, I mean less than optimum, right? So if I give a salesperson a job, their job is only to sell. They're not excited about doing the work. They're excited about selling the work. And whereas you as a PR maven are probably super excited to watch your customers get results and to get those placements that they need, often in the middle there is where that tension exists of, oh boy, I have to deliver this work. So maybe I don't scale it as much as I could. Or, you know what, some of the folks that I talk to, and maybe you're not one of them, but certainly some of the founders that I talk to end up discounting their rates because they don't believe that they're worth it, because maybe they've never paid anybody to do something that they expect that others will pay. I've had ad agencies that we've worked with that would never consider asking someone to pay them $500 or $1,000 an hour, when in reality they're saving 5 to 10 hours over the person doing the work or over someone less experienced. And as soon as they can realize that founder recognizes that they're selling the result, not their hour of time, then they can bridge that gap. But until they can do that, and sometimes they can't without the help of a salesperson, well, then they're going to be stuck exactly where they are, and they're not going to scale as good as they could have.
Yeah, I think selling time is a really tough way to do business, although I know that a lot of lawyers and accountants do business that way. But people are always going to question, did it really take you that long to do that task? And then, yeah. So I think selling value is a much better thing than trying to sell time.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Well, we're going to continue our conversation shortly, but first I want to tell everyone in PR Maven Nation that I have released my book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, as an Audible version, and it's available on Amazon.com. So you can get it as Audible or Kindle or as a print version. And the book is all about how you can grow your audience and your network in order to grow your personal or organizational brand. And I had a lot of fun writing this book during the early days of COVID-19. And now I'm very proud that we've been able to release the Audible version. So we're going to be back in just a moment for more of my conversation with Phil Gerbyshak, the Chief Revenue Officer at Process and Results.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back. And today we're talking with Phil Gerbyshak, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Process and Results. And I want to dive right back in with some more questions. So, Phil, what is the tie between PR, marketing, and sales?
Wow. Now this is tough, but I think they're super, super connected. Let's back into that with sales first. Salespeople uncover problems, challenges, and obstacles that customers want to pay to have solved. From there, our marketing people then are going to tell stories, write articles that try to either help people become more aware of those problems or that showcase the fact that, yes, indeed, these problems can be solved and our organization can help you and they can drive that demand. And then PR really helps spread the message out and gets the entire world to know that, yes, there are problems. Yes, there are solutions. Yes, there are people that can help you. And even if this isn't for you, this is probably still worth reading about because it's in an interesting way. And I really think PR people are great salespeople, great marketing people, great marketers are great at PR and sales, and great salespeople are great at marketing and PR because we have to be willing to be flexible. And I think full stack people that understand PR, marketing, and sales in a good way, in a healthy way, and that respect all of the disciplines, understand at least enough to say, you know what? While I can be pretty good at all three of these, I bet that if I hired an expert in PR, or if I hired an expert in marketing, or an expert in sales, that they'd be even more effective. So I think they're super tied together, and they're all three very, very important.
I agree absolutely that they're all very important. And even though I own a PR agency, and this is the PR Maven podcast, I do a lot of what I call content marketing. And actually, this podcast in and of itself is content marketing, where we're putting out interesting content and telling stories that I hope resonate with people. And then, the sales actually happens more quickly. I can't say that it happens on its own, but if you have good marketing, I believe that does speed up the sales process because people are more likely to know, like, and trust you when they start doing business with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are really good points, Nancy. I think it also reminds people that great marketing and great PR builds that awareness and that demand to make those sales much simpler because people can self-qualify themselves and see themselves in those stories. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I always like to think of PR and marketing people as sort of setting the stage. So when the salesperson walks out on the stage, he or she can be the star of the show and ultimately close the sale. So I do think that salespeople appreciate having a good PR and marketing team behind them.
They better. I agree.
So why do great leaders make great salespeople?
Well, I think great leaders make great salespeople because great leaders are already really great at listening, at asking questions, at responding, not reacting, and at helping influence decisions. Well, those are things that great salespeople do as well. Maybe not to sell a product or a service, but certainly to sell an idea, a concept, or your organization. So I think that great leaders make great salespeople simply because the skill sets are very much the same. We also have to ask, as a leader and as a salesperson, we have to ask for a commitment. That's really what a sale is. It's a commitment to change. So as a leader, as a salesperson, you just know that those are things that must be done. And we have to communicate those things. We have to communicate them as expectations. We have to communicate them as things that are in others' best interests. And we have to find ways to connect the overall mission of an organization back to the decision that's being made. Sales, leadership, or otherwise, those are the things that you have to do if you want to be effective and if you want to move things forward. So I think, again, leaders, salespeople, right? Great leaders are great salespeople are great leaders. Whether or not you lead other people formally or not with a title, it's important that you do understand that you are helping people see the benefit of change by making the decision you're asking them to make.
I like thinking of it. I've never really thought of sales in that way, but I agree absolutely that people need to be able to believe in the vision that you're helping them paint, basically, so they will follow you. And when you make a recommendation, they'll be willing to part with their money to make something happen, either for themselves or their company. So I think thinking of leaders as salespeople and salespeople as leaders is a really good way to think about it. So you have such a bright smile and a positive outlook on life. I know that you and I spoke some time ago, and I really was impressed with your positive attitude towards life. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think a lot of it is attributed to gratitude. I really focus on what I'm grateful for each and every day. I try to come up with 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for, large or small. Some days there are little things like, I'm grateful for a traffic jam that prevented me from getting in a car accident that was, 3 minutes ahead of me. Or I'm grateful for the fact that the coffee ran out today because it made me pause and have a little bit of extra thinking time. Things like that. It could be a big thing too. Many days I'm grateful for a hot shower, a strong cup of coffee, and a good bacon and egg breakfast. So I focus on those things that I'm grateful for that I already have. I think that really contributes, to the outlook that I have in life, to my positive attitude. And then if I really scale that back and I really think about that, I think about my 2 grandmothers. My grandma on my dad's side, she was, Depression era. She reused Wonder Bread bags. We use them as boot liners. We use them to carry things out to the barn. We use them inside of our gloves and mittens when they were raining. And grandma reused everything and she never complained about it. She just did it. So I recognize that sometimes, even if I don't want to do something, I still have to do it. And I should do it with a smile on my face because it influences other people. And my other grandmother was even more directly responsible. My maternal grandmother, my grandma Murphy, she always remembered everybody. She was the original relationship person that I ever remember. She had a birthday card, an anniversary card, a Christmas card, an Easter card, a Valentine's Day card. She had something for everyone. It wasn't because she was rich. In fact, quite the opposite. My grandmother lived on a fixed income for much of her life, but she just made time to make sure that she made people feel special with a little handwritten note or a little card. And what was special about it was not the card or the handwriting or anything like that. It was the fact that she would think on each person that she was going to write to and made it extremely personal to them. So I've recognized in my life that I have to make things extremely personal to other people. I have to be fully present with them. So if I'm talking with them, if I'm interviewing with them like we're doing here today, if I'm sending an email, I really focus on that power of one and the impact that I can make. And I know that my energy, it transmits over the airwaves, if you will, over the world. So if I'm not in a good mood to send a message, I don't send it. I don't make that call. I take a pause and I reschedule that, because if I can't focus the goodness on people, I really won't. So I thank both my grandmothers for that, and I thank gratitude for that opportunity.
Are your grandmothers both alive still, Phil?
Unfortunately not. My one grandmother passed when she was 88 years old. I remember her last birthday, actually. My brother and I went to the Brewers game, and we caught 2 baseballs for grandma. And we were on TV several times with the Buckethead Brigade back in Milwaukee. And my other grandmother, she had macular degeneration, so she couldn't see me the last few years of her life. But I spent a lot of time with her, and I want to say she was 85 or 86 when she passed. So they're both gone from this earth, but they're not gone from my heart. They will always live on in my heart.
That's very sweet. That's so sweet. I had a grandmother who spent a lot of time with me when I was growing up, and I have really great memories of her. I never got to meet my maternal grandmother, although I know she was quite a socialite. So I think I probably got some of her DNA because I love socializing too. So all the pictures that I have of her, she had a martini in one hand, sometimes a book in the other, or the telephone. So, Phil, what is a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful in your career?
Well, I'm going to give you one of each. A favorite book of mine that I realized was really going to be helpful for me was How to Win Friends and Influence People. Really, I listened to it early on, and it really helped me focus on the other person. It was so helpful, so helpful. I read that early on in my career, listened to that early in my career, and it changed my life. An app that I use every single day is the Otter app, OTTER. Go to otter.ai and get it. And it transcribes as well as records the MP3, or I can go to their website, otter.ai, and drop on a video or a podcast, and it transcribes it in real time. I use that in sales to record my part of the conversation. I use that to transcribe a lot of the video that I do, and I use that behind the scenes and all the Zoom calls that I make because it transcribes into the cloud the coaching that I do, and it really helps folks on that. And then a website that I would say has really helped me is Feedly, FEEDLY.com. Feedly allows me to subscribe to my favorite blogs and article websites and pushes in those articles so I don't have to go out to those websites and find them. So those are the three things that I would say have helped me: how to win friends and influence people, the Otter app, and Feedly.com.
Oh, those are really great recommendations. I want to thank you for that. And I want to tell you that I know I have listeners who follow through on the recommendations from my guests. I was just talking to Sean O'Leary the other day. He is somebody who does active shooter training, believe it or not. And he's an avid listener of the podcast. And he says that he goes out and buys every book that's recommended. So I'm sure when he hears about how to influence or how to win friends and influence people, if he hasn't already read it, he will. So thank you. Those are really great recommendations. I had not heard of Otter or Feedly, so I will check those out. So that brings us to the end of our time together. If people want to follow up and get in touch with you, Phil, how would they do that?
Well, the easiest thing to do is to find me on your favorite social network and to connect with me there and let me know that you heard me on the PR Maven podcast. Gerbyshak is GERBYSHAK. You can find me pretty much everywhere. I'm typically Phil Gerb for a handle, PHILGERB. I'd be happy to help there. Or go to processandresults.com. You can schedule time, read some articles, or just contact us. Send me an email, phil@processandresults.com, or use the contact form. Happy to help you in any way that I can. But like I said, often social media is the least friction way. So feel free to go ahead and do that as well, because I know that's an easy way for people to do that and not have to stress so much.
Well, Phil, this has been really interesting and entertaining, and I want to thank you for spending the time with me and with my listeners today. And I hope that we can stay in touch and reconnect at some point, especially after this pandemic has gone by.
Sounds great, Nancy. Thanks for having me on the show.
Have a great day. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.